as people who are always passionate about traveling the continent and working the continent, serving the continent, loving the continent, we cannot ignore the challenges we face, especially at the borders when we need to travel. Right now, in ECOWAS, where we have countries within our region where we can travel just with your national passport, is even difficult because there are men and women in uniform who find themselves at these borders. The very people who are supposed to facilitate free movement of goods, people, and services, they're making it difficult for us to go through. And we also have other sub-regional blocks like the East African Community, Southern Africa Development Community, Central African Community, and we have the Northern Africa as well. So the continent is segregated into sub-regional blocks. It may be relatively easier for you to travel within your sub-regional block, but going from one regional block to another is where the challenge comes in. And when we talk about visa-less Africa or borderless Africa, we are not necessarily saying that people should leave their borders porous, but we are basically saying make it visa-free, because that is why we have the African Union, and that is why we have these diplomatic or international governing bodies, political bodies, to facilitate free movements of people, goods, and services on the continent. I believe a lot of young people want to enjoy the blessings of the continent, traveling around the continent and experience the best of the continent. But what do we see? We see our young people traveling or immigrating to Europe and places where they will find economic stability and they will be able to move freely. I believe we will keep more young people on the continent when we facilitate free movement. I can testify to that it's very difficult to travel. As somebody from Ghana, West Africa for that matter, traveling in Central Africa is difficult, East Africa is difficult, Southern Africa is difficult as well. Because some of the countries within these other sub-regional blocks would always want you to come and visit these countries when you have visas. And I can tell you that for somebody in Africa, it is difficult for me to travel across Africa than somebody with an European passport. And why? The question is, why must it be so? Maybe the church might think, well, that is not our concern. But I'm here to tell you that if the borders are closed, missionaries will not move freely from their country to other countries on the continent. So if the church, yes, we can consider praying that the Lord will touch the hearts of our political leaders so that the borders would be eased or relaxed for us to travel. But then again, if there are voices within the churches, that because there are politicians in our churches, there are people of influence in our churches who could start a movement, who could start the talks with the various governments so that these restrictions, high cost of visas, would be relaxed and made flexible for us to be able to travel the continent. I am not saying this to assume that Ghana is not caught in the same web, because there are other African nationals who try to enter Ghana and they also struggle. And so as a Ghanaian, I am saying that all of us are caught in the same web of restricting each other and preventing people from freely moving across the continent. Trade is not happening as it should be because people are afraid of the tax they will face at the borders. People are afraid of the frustrations they will face at the borders. People are afraid of the bribery and corruption they will encounter at the borders. But with a borderless or visa-less Africa, we will be able to move freely across the continent, serve the continent freely, and do businesses across the continent bravely. Again, bravely and freely. Again, I guess what I'm trying to say here, when I mention borderless Africa, I'm not saying we should have weakened borders and make our borders porous. Basically, I'm saying, as a Ghanaian, it should be easy for me to travel from Ghana to Nigeria, from Ghana to Cameroon, from Ghana to Botswana, from Ghana to South Africa, anywhere on the continent without being restricted. And the way forward is for us to put the right measures. If we have systems that are working, the borders will not be needed. Just like the European Union, somebody can move from France to Germany or Spain and they will not meet any border stop on the way because they have systems that are tracking everything. So nobody needs any border stops. Maybe we can learn from them because they have influenced us largely. And many of the things that are helping them could help us. Because for me, I cannot even think of somebody from the European Union being able to move freely in Africa than me, who is within the continent. How does that make sense to us? So Borderless Africa is for all of us to raise our voices. The church, social activists, politicians, whatsoever, we are all invited to be part of it. My name is Daite Xavier Turasi Hampresi. I'm a Ghanaian missionary and a motorcycle enthusiast. And currently, I'm Ghana's most decorated motorcycle adventurer, meaning I've traveled more countries on the continent on a motorcycle than any Ghanaian has done. Thank you.